Welcome everyone to another edition of Valley to Vietnam. My name is Bob Tribe and our guest today is Jim Calkin, a Marine who served in Vietnam. Jim, it's good to have you here.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you for being here. So, you were born in Manhattan.
That's correct.
And you grew up in Queens.
Yep. All my life in Queens, actually raised most of the time in a section of Queens called Bayside, and went to elementary school and high school there.
So, your father's occupation?
He was a fireman with the city of New York.
Oh, wow. And your mother was a homemaker?
No, my mother, actually, my parents had gotten divorced when I was around 5. And my mother went to work as an executive secretary for a company that was Sperry Rand and then became Unisys. So she worked in the city and commuted from Queens, bus and subway to work. And so did my grandmother who lived with us. So everybody, my mother never drove until she moved to Florida at 77 and learned to drive. So.
Wow. So what was your neighborhood like?
It was a really residential area, tract homes, primarily a Jewish community. There were 2 Christian families on the block, so I grew up playing basketball at the temple because they had an indoor basketball court.
Oh, okay. Almost
all of my friends were Jewish from that community. So.
Wow. And your high school, you were telling me a little bit about Bayside High School earlier, had like separation into 3 programs.
Yeah, it was a large high school. We had 4,000 students. So, but at that time in New York, there were 2 things. You categorized yourself as whether you wanted to go to college. You took an academic program. If you didn't plan on going to college, you took what they called a general diploma. And then a lot of the young ladies took a commercial diploma if they were going to become bookkeepers or secretaries. So there were 3 routes to getting a high school diploma at that time.
I see. Were you in ROTC in high school?
No.
Okay.
They didn't have that at Bayside.
But you did well in high school, so you were accepted at Columbia University.
Yeah, I had a couple of scholarships to NYU and St. John's, but when I got into Columbia, that was my first choice.
Okay. And there you were in ROTC.
I joined ROTC my freshman year, and then after my freshman year, they appointed me and gave me a scholarship for the remaining portion of my time there.
And that was a naval scholarship?
An NROTC scholarship, okay. Yes.
And so what was your major in college?
I was an economics and history major.
Okay. So you would do various sorts of jobs as you were growing up? Yeah,
part-time. I guess my biggest part-time job was a caddy. I grew up right next to a golf course, so and I started playing golf when I was about 12, so I just kind of merged into the caddy thing.
You have a military obligation of 6 years?
I had a 6-year obligation. I got a regular commission when I graduated from Columbia in 1962, and I had a 6-year obligation, and 4 years active duty and 2 years in the reserve. So.
And 3 things happened right away when you graduated.
Well, I got married.
Yeah.
I had met my wife as a sophomore in high school, and so we kind of went together all through high school, and she went to a different college in Manhattan, but and then we got married right as we both graduated college, and I took off from there to Quantico, and the basic school, which all Marine officers go to.
And that's like 6 months?
It's a 6-month, so from July until December of '62, I was stationed at Quantico at the basic school.
And I take it at some point while you were at Columbia, you decided not to be a naval officer.
Yeah, because part of the NROTC program is you did summer training on board ship with the Naval Aviator Wing, and then you make a decision, usually after your sophomore year, whether you're going to go in the Navy or, if you can, go in the Marine Corps. And I really did not like the confining quarters on board ship. Yeah. And so I decided to take what they call the Marine option. And at that time, they allowed 16% of the class, or 1/6 of the class, to take that Marine option. And in my case, there were 5 of us that graduated and got commissioned in the Marine Corps.
So some people who might want to be Marine officers couldn't be in that program, or?
Well, if there were in excess of the 16%, they would have then, I guess, I don't know that it's ever happened, but they would have weeded it down to the 16%.
So tell me about the basic school. What was that like?
The basic school is kind of an advanced boot camp. You already have gone through boot camp for potential officers at Quantico the summer before.
Right.
And then basic school is kind of an advanced boot camp with tactical training and leadership training. Primarily.
Are the instructors primarily officers, or?
No, most of the instructors are enlisted, but all of the students are brand new second lieutenants.
Right. So there could be a little friction there.
Friction is kind of, they're tough on you, let's put it this way, because what they're trying to do is make sure you're capable of leading them.
Yeah.
And so that's the whole purpose of it.
I still remember going to jump school right after I graduated from officer candidate school, and so it was run by all the NCOs. They were very polite, and they'd say things like, "Sir, I didn't quite like the way you did that. Let's do that again," and drop and give me 10. And if you didn't do 11, because all airborne folks were required to do 11 when they said 10, then you started all over again. But I know what you mean. So after basic school, what happens?
After basic school, you get assigned a primary MOS, military occupational specialty. You put in for which branch of the Marine Corps you want to go into, and then you get assigned a duty station. In my case, I chose infantry, and I was assigned to the 1st Marine Division at Camp Pendleton in California.
What would be your other options besides infantry?
Artillery, tanks, supply.
Yeah.
Can you cut it?
Yeah.
I should have turned my phone off.
Background music.
Yeah, really.
We'll keep that in. Yeah.
I could include Barry Sadler singing the Ballad of the Green Berets, but I always hated that song.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, this goes, actually, I can start to hear it in my hearing aids first, so it.
I thought it was coming from over here, that we had a Marine hiding in shelving or something like that. So anyway, you become you sent to Camp Pendleton.
Yes, I was, assigned to Camp Pendleton as a 2nd lieutenant with an infantry platoon. I was a platoon commander.
And how long did you do that?
Probably about 8 or 9 months. And then they decided that for some reason, I would fit into the battalion staff position, and I was moved up as an assistant S1 as legal officer of the battalion to which was a position I really didn't care about because you dealt with all the Marines who were getting in trouble all the time, so it was a little unusual.
See, the reason for that was that Columbia diploma. That's why they moved you to
I
headquarters.
think that probably had something to do with it.
So you're on the West Coast now?
Yeah, I've never left the West Coast. My wife and I drove out here by ourselves, and our two daughters were born out here, so that's...
So that was 1963?
Yeah, came out here in early in 63, and then I knew that the end of 64 that I was going to be transplaced with the entire battalion I was with to Okinawa for a 13-month unaccompanied tour.
Oh, okay.
And my wife would then remain by herself in California.
That had to be tough.
Yeah, it was. You knew it was coming. It was just part of the job.
Right.
That,
So what was life at Okinawa like?
when we went to Okinawa, it was mainly training, a variety of things, cold weather training. We went to Mount Fuji. We did a couple of operations in the Philippines and Malaysia and Thailand.
Those are probably good places.
And then we were the afloat battalion, the ready battalion that the Marine Corps kept on board ship, cruising around the Pacific in case there was problems. And the problem became Vietnam, and we became one of the first units put in.
So you went into Vietnam in 1965?
In April of 65, yeah, when they first put full tactical units in.
Yeah, that was the earliest unit period, I think.
Yeah, we were either the first or second full battalion into the Danang area, I Corps.
Okay. And almost all the Marines ended up fighting in I Corps.
That's correct.
Which is that first zone to the north, right up against the DMZ.
That's...
And where you were fighting more NVA, North Vietnamese, rather than Viet Cong.
That's correct.
Yeah. So that's sort of the toughest duty. So you're there for...
I was there in country from April until November.
Okay.
Because that's when the 13-month rotation date, and our whole unit, they had dispersed the unit because they couldn't just pull the whole battalion off the front lines. So they kind of dispersed us and exchanged us with other Marine battalions, so that I actually moved to a battalion, and then after about three weeks left.
And did you have one or two jobs during that time?
I was basically had two jobs. One is the S1 or personnel officer for the battalion staff, and then for a short period of time I was a company commander.
Okay. What did you think about Vietnam?
I thought at that time that we were doing what we were told to do, and that was our job, and it was only, I personally, I feel you don't go to war unless it's absolutely necessary, but then when you go, get it taken care of. And I could see toward the end of my tour there, it was getting more political than I thought it needed to be, and it kind of hindered the military operations.
And it would get a lot more so as the years...
A lot more so
right.
After I got home.
So you're still in active duty when you leave.
Yes.
And so what was your next job?
Actually, I came back and was assigned to Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton as my next job, and wound up going to the Infantry Training Regiment back in the same camp I had left a year before, almost to the same, in fact, to the same exact building with a different outfit.
So were both your daughters born while you were gone, or?
No, my oldest daughter was born while I was in Vietnam, and she was 5 months old when I got home.
Okay,
So my wife really served as much as I did, because
sure.
she was, 23 years old, having a kid, living 3,000 miles away from home,
Right.
and not knowing if I was coming back. So it's not only the Marine that serves, it's the family does too. And
That's for
my
sure.
second daughter was born about a year after I got back.
Yeah, that's tough. I have a bunch of the letters my dad wrote my mother while he was overseas in World War II, and I never even met him till I was 2 years old,
Yeah.
so.
And that's the way it was because I spoke to my wife in the year I was gone twice, and that was the entire communication was by letter.
Right.
And several years ago, we did give my oldest daughter the letters, as you mentioned, that we had written each other 2 weeks before she was born and 2 weeks after. So she has those now as a memento,
Nice.
and treasures them.
Yeah. So you finish active duty in 1966,
That's correct.
and so then you still have a reserve obligation.
I had a reserve obligation, but I didn't have to formally join. I was assigned to a reserve unit, but I really didn't have to participate in any training at all.
But would you still have meetings once a month, or?
No, didn't have to.
So it was sort of inactive reserve?
Sort of inactive reserve, yes.
That's exactly what I went into,
Yeah.
so. So, what's this about that same year having a kidney removed?
Yeah, I had gotten injured over in Vietnam and had a couple of severe pain attacks that I didn't know what, and shot me full of morphine, and by the next day I usually was able to refunction. And when I got back to the States, I got another one of these attacks, and one of the surgeons assigned to the battalion I was in did some checking, and it looked like I had some kidney problem, and so they sent me down to Balboa Naval Hospital, and during the exploratory surgery, the surgeon had removed one of my kidneys because it was infected, and it was something that happened overseas, and because of the situation, we just didn't know what it was, but
Sure.
I've been fine since, so
Well, good.
you can operate on just one.
Yeah, I think I learned that after a time. So life after the Marines, what did you do?
I got into sales, industrial sales, and worked for a couple of companies, including Sherwin-Williams. And then early in the 80s, I joined a local distributor and became a part owner of the distributor company, which I worked until I was 76, because it was our company, and
Right.
it grew substantially. And then I retired in March of 2017.
Okay. And your daughters, what has become of them?
I'm going to turn this off. Oh,
Yeah.
Joe, I don't want to talk.
Sometimes I think I turned mine off, and I
Yeah.
still get calls.
I thought I did.
Yeah. Well, us old folks using these modern things that you youngins use, we're not that good at.
Yeah, my daughters, one lives in Palm Desert, my oldest one, and she has kind of a unique job. She has her own internet business, but she also is a caregiver for a young woman who has severe emotional problems. So she takes care of her and basically is her life coach.
Okay.
And this young woman's probably 29 or so, and so she's more of a counselor, caregiver to her. My youngest daughter lives here in Sacramento, and she's a dermatologist in town and has been in private practice here for the last 20-plus years.
And she has children?
She has 2 children. My oldest daughter has a son who's in community college in Palm Desert, and then my daughter here in Sac has a daughter who's at University of Chicago as a junior, and then I have a grandson at Christian Brothers High School here in town.
Okay. So you're a recent citizen of Sacramento.
Yeah, unfortunately in June of 2018, my wife passed away after a very brief illness, a matter of hours, and my 2 daughters decided it was probably best I sell the house and move closer to one of them, and it made good sense with my 2 grandkids still kind of at home here in Sacramento that I move here, so I moved up here in November of 2018.
Well, we're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Jim, I want to thank you for coming in today, and thank you for your service. I just happened to see Jim at my health club, and he had that Marine hat on, and so I ran up to him and said, "Hey, were you in Vietnam?" And that's the way I get most of the folks that come in here, so thanks again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That concludes an episode of Valley to Vietnam. Come with us next time. Thank you.